For those of you, or not so much housekeeping as administration, for those of you that have not visited the Caller Lab website recently, they have updated the access to knowledge base. There's a lot of really good information on it. It's a lot easier to get in and out and to also search. So kudos to everybody at the Caller Lab staff for all the work they're doing, and Teresa for giving everybody the right pat on the head or swat across the backside where it was deserved appropriately. There is a lot of information out there. There's a lot of very good note services and information that is available. Of course, we've got our own Behind the Mic magazine here, which is featured. Ed, I believe are you still writing, Ed? The news and notes?
No, that ended in, what was it, 2000, I think.
Wow.
It was before that. It was 1990. It was 1990.
Yeah. Well, we're still pulling articles out of it because they're as valid today as they were back then. As I said earlier, all of these sessions, as well as the GSI Caller School and various others, are available on the OC Callers website. For those of you that have the email invitation, that link is at the bottom, and I'll post it again in the chat a little bit later. But there is a lot of information and a lot of access to information out there for callers. I want to stress again, the technical information, the availability of information, and the amount of information is phenomenal. Nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, will supersede practical experience and practical application. We are here for the dancers. We are here because of the dancers, and the dancers are and always will be our first and foremost. And so that's why we do these sessions, is to make ourselves just that little bit better for the dancers. I'd like to thank Mark Hart. He's up in the left-hand side. He looks after all the technical. I'd like to thank all of you for coming in today, given that it is the Easter weekend. A lot of people have taken the break. Don Beck has his sessions also Sunday mornings, but they've shut down over the Easter weekend. I want to take this opportunity very much to welcome back to the foray Mike Sikorsky and Janet. Give us a wave, Janet. You're the important one. Now you can give us a wave, Mike. Mike has been calling since, what, 1972, I think it is. Yeah, 1972. Back in California. I gave Mike a rather long-winded and lengthy introduction the last time we had him here, and I hadn't even covered half of what he does, but he is a major teaching presence, a major calling presence, a major singing presence, a major recording presence. Basically, if he was a major in the Army, he'd be a general major in the Russian Army, because you can't get that high. Mike was over talking to us earlier about his Activator system of calling, and we've got him back today to talk about one of the most controversial topics going, and that is the difference between site calling and site resolution, which in my opinion are two completely different beasts. So I'm going to turn that over to Mike. Thank you and welcome back.
Thank you, Mel. Hey, thanks everybody for being here today. You're sharing Janet's screen so she can do the presentation. Here it is. And whatever you hear from me today is my opinion. You may very well hear somebody else talk about the same type of things. They'll use different terms, etc. But this is my opinion. This is how I structure my calling. Okay, so let's go to the next. It's frozen.
Oh, we tested the look, but we didn't test the moving. Okay.
Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, now the side calling is creating the dance experience. It's kind of like creating the Disneyland ride. There's something a little special. There's a beginning, there's a special part, and then there's the quick resolution to a comfortable position. So the comfortable formation, if you look to the right of your screen, the standard in-facing line.
Oops, sorry.
Whoops. Oh, you skipped one. Okay. We went back one because what happened there?
I messed up. That's what happened.
I'm not going to make my training comment again.
We didn't hear her say she messed up.
Teamwork, you gotta love it.
There's a
Now
page
you know
before
why
this?
I'm muted.
Is there a page before this or is this that?
This is the first page.
Okay, so you've got, in creating the dance experience, basically you got a squared set where they start. And every time you do a little sequence, unless you're resolving, and that is the site resolution, is getting them out to your Alaman left, your right and left grand, where they promenade home or they end up at home. That's the resolution. Now you need all the other stuff where the partners are and the numbers and all that. But in creating the dance experience, look to the right where they're all purple, there are no numbers. You get standard in-facing lines, that's all that matters. And again, my opinion, but the standard in-facing line is the most secure position a dancer can be in. You put them through something that maybe has a little bit of challenge to it. Maybe we'll show some different ways to play with Dixie style today. For instance, one of my favorite tools, because we limit ourselves so much to Dixie style to a wave, and then take a peek, trade the wave, or boys either trade or hinge. And there's so many other things you can do. As soon as you change it a little, that variety creates just the slightest bit of increase to difficulty. And then you want to do it and get back to this line just as fast as you can. Can we go to the next page? Well, it comes up here. Okay, so resolving, now you got to have all these numbers in here and know where they are so you know how to get out. Okay, next. Now, in the creation of the dance experience, and this is how I teach it in my college schools, I tell the students to take the dancers from a squared set and put them into an in-facing standard line as quickly as possible. That might be heads lead right, veer left, and bend the line. It might be heads lead right, slide through. Could be sides lead left, veer right, bend the line. Whatever it is, get them in a line. Now think of something you want to feature that's something that's slightly different than the normal, something maybe you don't call all the time. Get yourself in the position to do it. So you got, then we're going to call that the theme, and then you're going to call the theme, and then you're going to get them back to standard in-facing lines as quickly as possible, and hopefully do this in less than 10 calls. Okay, next. Okay, a theme is a 3 or 4 call sequence that has 2 basic criteria to it. Number 1, it flows extremely well. Number 2, it is slightly different from the normal. So we're going to build a dance experience now. The setup, because we need to get them in the standard line, it's going to be heads lead right, veer left, chain down the line. Now I did that way to show you that I don't have to have a partner line. I don't have to have a corner line or an opposite lady line. I've got a line there where the ladies are in sequence and the boys are out. I don't care. I've got them in facing lines, and we're going to create the dance experience. Now, the experience is going to be Dixie style and then tag the line. That's the thing that's slightly different than is usually called in this case. Now, because chain down the line has a courtesy turn to it and flows nicely into the Dixie style, we don't have to set it up. But anytime you do a Dixie style to a wave or you do a flutter wheel, you got to have the flow into it, and that's the courtesy turn type flow. If you find yourself in lines and need to call it, you can call square through 3 and courtesy turn. They're right back in the same footprint, but the flow has now been created for a Dixie style or a flutter wheel. So make sure that one is in your repertoire. Hey, next page. Okay, so now we've got, for our sequence, heads lead right, veer left, chain down the line, Dixie style, and tag the line. Okay, so we got them into the line, and we actually did our theme in 2 calls. But I have found in certain dance floors, the Dixie style to a wave and tag the line is a little rough at first. There's a lot of dancers that have not seen it or don't do it very much. So if they struggled a bit after you called tag the line, with this particular setup, you simply face right and bend the line, and you now have partner lines. You could actually circle left and Alaman left and promenade home, but you're getting them out really quickly in case they goof. You can go back and do it again. So if the dancers are quote with you, that means they're all dancing in unison. They're all unit. You might continue by calling another theme. So this time we're going to do another Dixie style. We're going to tag the line, and then we're going to cloverleaf. Again, something that doesn't show up very much. Okay, so if the dancers are still with you, because at that point, you've got the boys in the center, you might call boys square through 3, and with the girls, do a left touch a quarter, and then call a chain down the line. Now, assuming you got to call all of that, let's see where the dancers are. Go to the next page, if you would, please. They are here in facing line. Now, sometimes it's your own club, dancers you have every week. You're going to go ahead and extend the sequence. At this point, particularly if it's early in the dance, you're going to want to get out pretty quick. Anyway, go to the next one there. Okay. Now, so after the prior sequence, can we go back a page? Okay, if you notice, this is a line of 4 where we're out of sequence. So a past the ocean would put you in sequence. Also notice it's an opposite lady line. Therefore, when you all 8 circulate, or a wave, I should say, when you all 8 circulate, it becomes a partner wave. So go ahead and go to the next page now. And that's where they end up after the past the ocean, all 8 circulate, right there. And most of you can see from here, there's a couple of quick get outs. One is boys run and promenade home. Some people might even try to call scoot back and right and left grand. My personal preference right here after the all 8 circulate is girls U-turn back, couples circulate 1.5, bend the line and you're home. When you can do these get outs like that, where they're home, or you take them to a right and left grand without an Alaman left and they're home, you are adding to the excitement factor, the wow factor of the dance. Okay, can we go to the next? Okay. So these are the possible get outs. You could have them from that wave. Oh, Google's talking to me on my phone. I'm not talking to you, Google. From that where we're in sequence holding right hands with our original partner, you could hinge and turn to face. Of course, if you're calling plus, you would call hinge and roll. Then you can do the right and left grand and promenade short. You, as I said before, you could do a girls U-turn back, couple straight 1.5 and bend the line. You're home. You say boys run and you promenade. I'm not a big fan of doing a lot of promenading because the boys are the promenade, the whole nature of it. The boys are like a Great Dane and the ladies are like a dachshund. Because the boys are taking they can take these little steps and it's very leisurely, but the girls are taking big steps and they're hurrying to keep up with everything. And we do enough of that in the singing calls. So I tend to not use those very much in pattern calling. Next page. Okay, now we're going to show you that exact same sequence if you started in a corner line, which is simply heads or sides, square through 4 and slide through. This is a corner line. All dancers are partnered with their original corner. You're all facing in, standard couples. Okay. Now at this time, like I said before, after a slide through, there's no flow to comfortably call Dixie style. So we now call square through 3, courtesy turn, and now go into the rest of the sequence, Dixie style, etc. So now the entire sequence, starting from this corner line, is head square through 4, slide through, square through 3, and courtesy turn, Dixie style, tag the line, cloverleaf, boys square through 3, left touch a quarter with a girl, and sometimes you have to tell the girls to connect, chain down the line. You go to the next page. After all of that, here's where the dancers are. The more experienced callers can tell you what the get outs are from this position. But if you go to the next page, we'll show you. One of my favorites is the top one. It's past the ocean, girls U-turn back in Ferris wheel. Can we go back a page? If you see look at number 1 couple. If you see past the ocean, see where that puts them? And if the girls U-turn back, they're a couple. The Ferris puts them home. Now, if you're a guy, look at the number 4 couple. If they pass the ocean, they go to the other side with the boy facing in, straight ahead and face. The girl does a U-turn back, and now you've got your friends and strangers Ferris wheel resolve right there. Okay, if you go forward a page. So I would see in my side calling, I would see that I had right then the heads paired and the sides not. So I do what it takes to get the heads home as quickly as possible, and I'll deal with the sides while I'm thinking about it while I'm doing what I got to do with the heads. And if it's a friends and strangers, you people have been calling a while, you know that at this point it's going to be either a slide through or a square through 3. And in this case, I prefer star through rather than slide through. Or you could just say centers pass through, Alaman left, and you're home. Now, if we don't go back in the presentation, but when we started this, we set the whole thing up with the flow calls we call Dixie style and tag the line. You're supposed to get your theme done and get out within 10 calls. If we had done a face right and bend the line, we got out in 4. So we went ahead and did another theme. That took us to this point where we are. Go ahead. Next page. Now, there's certain flow modules the dancers will learn to do and you'll learn to call when you think of pattern calling this way. Those need to go in your permanent use file. This one is Dixie style to a wave and tag the line. After which, if they messed up, it's face right and bend the line. But if you continue a good dance experience, it was Dixie style to a wave, tag the line, and maybe you could have the boys cloverleaf. Or you could have the boys square through 3 to a left touch a quarter and then a chain down the line. Think of other things you can do. You could have had the boys step to a wave and swing through and extend. Maybe you got new dancers and you're going to scoot back with the girl going first. As a normal calling, if you scoot back, the boy always goes first and the girl always goes second. In this case, the girl would go first and the boy would go second. So that's a good variety to have. Next page. Okay, now we're going to link 2 themes together in one sequence. The first theme is going to be 8 chain 3, which we don't call hardly ever unless we're going to an Alaman left. It's going to mean 8 chain 3, centers pass through, centers in, cast off 3/4. You may have to cue the outsides to stay facing out after the 8 chain 3. That's a good little practice, and they'll catch on right away. Now, the second theme we're going to work in this sequence is going to be pass the ocean, girls trade, spin the top. I would strongly suggest that a pass the ocean to a girls trade is good flow, and a spin the top starting with the boy end is not as common as the usual, which is swing through, spin the top, right and left through. Now we're going to set up our in-facing lines this way. Sides lead left and slide through. Janet, can we go to the next page, please? Now we're going to call the first theme. An 8-chain 3, which is the first call in this theme, cannot be called from in-facing lines. So we got to set it up. The sequence now looks like this. Sides lead left and slide through. I didn't want to call another slide through. As a younger man, I had hip issues, and 2 slide throughs in a way in a row like that would hurt my hip. And so I'm very conscious of these physical issues. And as you know, as our dancing population has aged, we have to be more cognizant of that all the time. So we did a sides lead left, slide through. Now we're going to right and left through and slide through, which puts them back in the same footprint as lead left and nothing else. But we've created this alternate dance flow back and forth, completely unwound over what we want to do next. 8-chain 3, centers pass through, centers in and cast off 3/4. And goes ahead. And now we've got, as you see, lines with the girls as a couple on the right hand end and the boys on the left hand side of the line, same sexes paired as couples. This is not an in-facing standard line. So we've created the dance experience. We now have to get back to a standard line. We go to the next. Now, if the dancers quickly, if they stumbled, you can get quickly back to in-facing lines by centers touch 1/4 and turn to face, or centers touch 1/4 and roll. Can you back up one for me? Look if I have the number 4 lady and number 4 man do a touch 1/4 and turn to face, I now have a corner line and standard couples. Now look at the number 2. I touch 1/4 and turn to face and leave the other ones alone. I've got standard couples over there. That's a quick way to get back to in-facing lines. Again, the most comfortable and reassuring position a dancer can be in. Let's go forward. Now, a way to get back to a line, a standard line that has a better dance experience to it, that could almost work as a theme by itself. We would do a pass through, a half tag, a hinge, scoot back and boys run. Can we back up one? Okay, if we look at where the number 1 man is, have him stay put. He did not do well, let's do this. If we pass through from here and half tag, you see he's still on your upper right, the end of that, the end of that wave. And now look at the number 4 lady. If you pass through and half tag, she's gone over to meet him. Now, for the ladies, they're going to want to look at the number 2 couple quite often. So look at the number, what the number 2 man does. When you pass through, the half tag turns him toward the bottom of your screen, moves him to that corner. So you end up in parallel ocean waves. Okay. Can we go forward to the next? Okay. So a better way to continue the dance experience would be the pass through, half tag, hinge. If the boys are on the end of the wave, when you hinge, the boys are now facing in, girls are facing out. You're going to scoot back which keeps the body flow going, keeps the dance experience going. Boys run. Now we have in-facing lines. Again, I don't care where the partnerships are. Next screen. Now, that creation to an in-facing line I just described is here. Now, if you want to get out quickly because the dancers are starting to struggle, sometimes it's just the fact that after 15 calls, their mind starts to wander a little bit. Somebody starts to stumble. You want to get out in a hurry. Do you see that you can call past the ocean, which puts the boys on the end of the wave in sequence? But the number 1 lady would be next to the number 4 man and vice versa. And the number, if you look below, the number 3 man will be with the number 2 lady and 2 with 3. So if you pass the ocean and then girls trade, now they're paired up with their original partner. Boys run and promenade. Next. Okay. Now let's assume the dancers were in unison and we did not have to get out before. So can we back up one? This is the line we're in. All the dancers succeeded. They were all with you, all in the same step. When you called boys run, they all did it the same step. They arrived there at exactly the same step. Nobody was lagging. Nobody was ahead of you. Now you can continue on. Next screen. This theme is going to be past the ocean, girls trade, and spin the top. We end up here. So you passed the ocean, girls did the trade, and then the spin the top is half right. Boys left 3/4 as the girls move up, and they end here. There's 2 ways from here to end up in standard in-facing lines. 2 easy ways. The easiest way, if you can visualize it, is hinge and turn to face, or hinge and roll. That would actually be a partner line with a number 1 couple in your upper left and the number 4 couple in your upper right, number 2 couple lower left. The other way, which puts you in an out of sequence partner line, would be swing through and recycle. Go to the next. Okay, if you did the swing through and recycle, which is a bit of a theme because you got to make sure your plus dancers don't do a grand swing through. That here is your out of sequence partner line. Next page. Yeah. Oh, you're there already. Okay. Now, there are a lot of choices from that out of sequence partner line. The first one, of course, is pass through, partner trade. Now you can face your partner, or you can partner trade and roll, and you can do a right and left grand. Most callers would see you could star through, pass through, and Alaman left. So you're never really very far away from your get out when you do a theme and get back to an in-facing line. You're never far away. Now, personally, these would be the get outs I would use. It'd be the first one is going to be sides, California twirl, Ferris wheel, center sweep, a quarterback up your home. Can we go back a page? If we have the sides, California twirl, we have a left-handed 2-face line. If we Ferris wheel, 2 and 4 are home, heads come to the middle, have to sweep a quarter and back up, and they're home. Go forward a page. In the second get out I would use from here probably is heads, California twirl, Ferris wheel, center sweep a quarter and back up, you stirred the bucket for the singing call. Can we go back a page and show that? If the heads do the California twirl, when they Ferris wheel, 1 is in the number 2 spot and 3 is at the number 4 spot. They've stirred the bucket. If the sides Ferris wheel to the middle and sweep a quarter, they've stirred the bucket. So from this line, you can have them home or you can stir the bucket depending on who you wanted to do the California twirl to set it up. Next. Okay, the last one is pass through, wheel and deal, probably the one I'd most likely use. pass through, wheel and deal, center, sweep a quarter, back up, and the others do a right and left through. Can we go back one page? All right, visualize your number one couple doing a pass through, a wheel and deal, and a sweep a quarter and back up. They're home. Now either watch 2 or 4, depending on your choice, pass through, wheel and deal. They're on the outside, but they're on the wrong side of the square. So the heads did the sweep a quarter back up and the sides did a right and left through, and you're back home. Okay, forward 2 pages. Okay. Now for this example, we'll get the dancers quickly into in-facing lines with the heads lead right, veer left, and bend the line. Now the first theme is going to be square through 4, but on the 4th hand, left touch a quarter. That's where they are in this diagram. Now we're going to say centers trade, left swing through, and boys trade. So I want you to watch this. If the centers, watch the number one man. If the centers trade, the boys are paired. If we have the centers trade, that puts the number 2 man on the other side with both boys facing out. And when they take a peek and trade, and you might have to say, take a peek. When they take a peek and trade, now we're in facing lines. So we go to the next. Okay, now we're in facing lines right here. Some callers would get thrown by the fact that I took them away from their original partner. Remember, we are in the dance, creating the dance experience. We don't care where they are as long as they're in standard lines. Okay. This is where they are after the centers trade and left swing through and boys trade. In facing standard lines. Okay, can we go to the next? Now we're going to call the second theme right away, which has a little more difficulty. We're going to pass the ocean, we're going to hinge, centers trade, and we're going to spin the top twice. Go to the next screen. And then we're going to get back to standard in facing lines quickly. We're going to swing through and boys run. And it puts them back here. Go back a screen. Okay. Look where the number one, okay. Let's see. Okay, so now, back it up. I lost my context here. Can we back it up one?
To there or the other way?
Yeah, that's the start point for you past the ocean.
That's the start for, okay. Thank you. Okay, so now we want to get back, we want to get them back to the standard lines quickly. So we did a swing through and a boys run, and that put them here. Now we're going to do the pass the ocean. So follow the number one man for a minute. Go ahead and forward it up.
I'm going forward.
Forward. Okay.
What?
Did we miss one?
Yeah, you've gone too far forward.
Back it up.
Back up. And back up again.
There we go. Okay, that's the in-facing line. Now, find the number one man, and that's where we're going to pass the ocean for the next theme. So go ahead to this next screen from here. Okay. So if the number one man did a pass the ocean, which put him lower left. You hinge, he's still lower left on the end of the way facing in. Centers trade, which he was not involved with. Number one man does a half by the right, the left 3/4. Person moves up to meet him. Another spin at the top is number one man, is a half by the right. He moves up while the others turn 3/4, and it puts him on the other end of the wave, right here. So if you go through all those dancers and go through that and work this out with terminations, that's what's going to happen. This is where they end up after that. Now, because this is a pretty, the pass the ocean, hinge, centers trade, and spin the top, not only is it a little more difficult, there's a lot of turning back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So we want to get them back to a standard in-facing line quickly. So go ahead and forward up. This is where we do the swing through and boys run, and we end up here. So after the theme, look for the quick out to get back to a standard in-facing line. Okay, go forward, please. Now we're going to call the third theme, which is an 8-chain 5, and a center's pass through and a center's in and cast off a half. Now, we can't call an 8-chain 5 from in-facing lines, so we called a slide through. Then we did the 8-chain 5, centers pass through, put centers in and cast off 3/4, and the dancers end up here. Okay, next. Okay, now let's get out in 5 calls or left. This is the third sequence. So we're pretty long at this point. You definitely want to get out. Okay, notice that the first get out and the quickest way out is ends face in, center circle right 1/4 and back up, and you're home because you've run that back. Do you see that the ends face in? When the ends are basically home, they're either going to star through in California twirl or they're just going to face in. And in this case, it's just face in. So visualize your number 3 and your number 1 facing in. Now look what happens to either number 2 or number 4, whatever you're looking at. When you circle right 1/4, they move 1/4 around and they're facing their partner, the original partner, still, but they're basically home. So you tell them to face in and back up. Most callers wouldn't see that get out. Can we go forward to the get out page? You could call past the ocean, swing through, boys run, past the ocean, scoot back, and then call a grand. So back it up 1. Okay. You could call past the ocean, and you call swing through. Now they pass the ocean and the swing through puts them out of go which way are we going, forward or back?
For the call?
Yeah, the get outs. Okay. So pass the ocean takes them out of sequence. The second pass the ocean puts them back in sequence. So at this point, I'm just going to trust you. You can check that out later because you can download this thing and work it out on Taminations, and you can see it work step by step. Now the other one, which is instead of ends face in, I had everybody touch 1/4 and boys run. Notice to the ends that puts them in the same place. So now back up 1. Okay. If we touch 1/4, watch number 1. See how it puts them on the other side of their partner? Now when the boy runs around the girl, they're home. If the centers touch 1/4 and then the boy run, they're facing in, but now we have to have them circle right 1/4 and back up as standard couples. Excuse me, they're still half sashayed couples. They circle right 1/4 and they face in and they back up. Okay, back up 1 more time. Okay. Now the other one that some callers might see is the touch 1/4 boys run, puts the heads at home. Now go back. If you touch 1/4 and boys run, notice the number 2 couple is directly in front of number 1 and 4 is directly in front of number 3. If you pass the ocean and recycle, they can back up and they're home. Again, work this out on Taminations. Okay, next.
The next slide now?
Yeah. Okay, that's me. That's how I structure side calling. I'm open to questions.
Did you want Mel to do any animation?
Mel, do you want to bring up Taminations on your screen? So if they have a question, we can demonstrate.
I will do. I've got a couple of things going on here. I'm just finishing up the questions in the chat right now. So give me 1 second. Talk amongst yourselves.
Well, I'll note that I had the cactus not growing out of my head the whole time, although I almost did it right there.
Yeah,
the whole
I've noticed
time?
that.
Oh, the whole time,
Okay.
Mike, it was coming out your ear.
Okay,
Mike-
now you said, is it possible to go through these sessions on terminations? Yes, we'll do that in a second. If you don't mind, we can back up and look at the whole thing theme by theme, if you will, so that you can see the sequences as they go. The first question is, when you use in-facing lines, even the variations of boy, boy, girl, girl, do you always keep boy on the left and girl, boy on the left end and girl on the right end, or is that just awareness? For example, centers touch, when you use the example, centers touch a quarter and face. All your in-facing lines seem to have the boys on the left and girls on the right
That's the
of
point.
the ends.
That's the point. That's the way I structure site calling. That's how I do it. Is you create something a little different, then you get them back to the standard in-facing line, because they can look around, their hands are joined, everybody's looking in, they can see that everybody sees the whole square and what they're doing. There's a little bit, just a little bit of, we did it. We solved that portion of the puzzle.
Okay, so, and that flows into the next comment was if you're going to work half sashayed in-facing lines, that would be part of the theme that you're working on. Is that correct?
Typically, that would be part of the theme. You might be, for instance, wanting to work, like if they're beginning plus dancers, you might want to work right and left through with the girl courtesy turning the boy.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, you're going to have people fight and wrestle and whatever. You're going to pass through and you turn back and say, now that we're normal.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
and even if they don't get the comment normal, you can right and left through. And the still half sashayed ones, they'll fix it.
Okay. Now, for those of you that have sent in questions, I've lumped a few of them together in this, so you'll recognize your question or part of the question because they were pretty much the same. Alternatively, if you had that boy, boy, girl, girl combination, you could normalize having the centers box the gnat, but does that create a connection issue as the centers are working opposites and will have their hands joined in the middle? You used a touch a quarter and roll or touch a quarter and face, that separates them. Would you use a box the gnat to normalize?
I prefer, okay, I follow this. If you did a box the gnat, the footprint would be the same, but the dancer experience would not be. Because box the gnat in most calling is not a standalone position. It's always followed by a pull by call.
Okay.
A lot of times it's box the gnat, right and left grand, etc. So I personally prefer touch a quarter and turn to face, and we all have lines with hands free. I wouldn't want a brand new dancer who had just learned load the boat to start that with a handshake.
Yeah.
For instance.
I think
And the call box the gnat starts.
Yeah, there was about 3 of those for normalizing, but I think that was Mike's that said, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is, would you use it or not because of the connection issue? And I think that's along the line. If you had something that needed that connection issue, yes. If it didn't, no.
And so it depends. You have the dancers that would appreciate the slight difference. This is particularly applicable if you have a club you're calling for all of the time, and you're always searching for that variation that doesn't raise the difficulty too much and yet still provides a change. So in my situation in Mesa, I get to do both. In the winter, again, pre-COVID, I called for people every week, twice a week, 3 times a week. You got to look for things to change it up all the time. But then I'm on the road in the summer, so now I'm the road guy. If I wanted to, I could call the same dance every week, although I'd bore myself silly.
Yeah. Okay. Question came up. Can the slides be made available so we can get the choreography to look at in Taminations? We are going to look at some of it in Taminations when we're finished the questions, but I posted the OC Callers website there. The recording and the slides will be available on that site. Mark will make them available there. Next question. Most of these you resolve to home. Doesn't that get tiring for the dancers? Wouldn't a right and left grand and a quarter or a short promenade for variety be better? Otherwise, everything to home gets tiresome, the same as Alaman left and left grand gets tiresome. I think that's just a general
Personally,
comment.
I would suggest that in my experience and the way I structure what I do, it is completely the opposite. What I do is I don't exhaust people. Because I can structure it so that as they all move sort of equal footprint, both turning right and left. Whereas if you promenade home, the fact that they're not home yet and they have to promenade a little, you lose some of your wow. Because when I'm calling and I do this thing and they're home, heads square through 4 and going back in like that, and then whoever did the last call, if it was the heads this time, they back outside square through 4, and by about the 3rd or 4th one, you got people starting to go, wow, where'd that come from? And that's the whole point. The more wows you can create, and you do it however you do it, but the more wows you can create, that's simply my method. The more wows you can create, the more they're going to crave getting back to your next dance.
And Mike, as you said, you're going to be doing a lot of promenading in the singing call.
Yeah.
As I said, correct. You're going to be doing a lot of promenading in a singing call. You don't want either person in the couplesome to wear out quickly. If you want people to leave your dance early and sort of deflate the energy, as it happens a lot, do a lot of right and left grands and promenade home. Do a lot of promenade home, because you're going to do a lot of that in the singing call, and the women are actually walking twice the distance that the men do in a dance, and a lot of times it's the women that wear out. And then think about in the singing call that some women are still twirling. They're doing a full twirl, and there are some who just they wear out quicker, and it's going to chase people away from your dance early when you'd really rather they stayed till the end. Now that's just my personal experience.
Yeah. This is just a comment of mine and observation is if I'm doing that, I don't like to do more than a quarter promenade and patter. If I'm setting up and I have something that has a right and left grand in it, I will do that, either right and left grand to home or just a very short promenade. That they're usually reserved for if you're doing something that has a theme or has a set of complex choreography that you want the dancers to have that quick relax. I'll throw one of those in just so they can regurgitate and then get back into it. It's a break.
What you're doing is you're just presenting what I said in a slightly different order with different words, but yeah, correct.
Yep. Absolutely. The next comment is, this is paraphrased from 3 different comments. So if I understand this, yours is set up to facing lines, extemporaneous or sight calling, moving the dancers using your theme. So your theme is what is the structured point, and then normal and get out, where the focus is on the theme and not the get out. And the get outs are fixed routine get outs, generally from whatever the normalized position is. And that was followed up with a comment. You say that some callers might see these. Are those all memorized get outs from that setup? That's a rather complex question. So breaking it down is your presentation is set up extemporaneous with the theme, normalize and get out. And then are your get outs fixed because you recognize where that formation is?
I'm looking for the get out all the time, but I don't call to the get out. I'm always looking for my escape hatch if somebody is they've stumbled, etc. That's why, as you notice, as we went through the presentation, they'll call a little bit. You'll call a little bit. If somebody stumbles, boy, you can get out to an in-facing line quick. You don't have to get them home. Even if somebody's out of position, half a square breaks. As we know, we put them in lines and say, lines up to the middle and back. This is the line you do it in. That's why. And so when I say resolve, in the classic sense, that means find the corner of the partner and right, left, grand, or promenade in their home. In my context, in the theme, oftentimes you're simply resolving as quickly as possible to an in-facing line so the dancers can take the big, just the brief one. And that helps in your creation of the feeling of success. That's my take on it.
Okay, now I may need some clarification from where this question from. It says, the question is, would you recommend using right-hand star and left-hand star instead of circle left and circle right?
Oh, that's me. I like it better than circling left and right. But I find that the dancers, a lot of them have never used either one of them too much, and it's got to be kind of slowly introduced.
Well, the interesting part is even mainstream dancers, and it's even funnier if it's experienced plus dancers. If you do the star, nobody is exactly home because nobody knows how to definitionally make a star. They
Mhm.
don't know how to do it. So if I wanted to, if they did, they would not be home if you turned a star. Uh, in that formation, I had the centers facing in, and the circle right would be the same as go to make a left-hand star.
Right.
And I think that would be more argumentative. If they turn the left-hand star, you could say turn it a little and face in and back home, but now you've lost your exactness that helps create the wow.
Yeah, if you're putting them into lines, though, it works a little bit better because they know they're looking for lines, especially if you give them a hint.
Correct.
You know, like heads lead to the right and circle right 3/4 is going to give you, or star heads lead to the right and star by the right 3/4 is going to give you in order lines.
And unless you tell them to face in afterwards and you have lines, I'm saying that most dancers wouldn't have lines. They would have
No.
8 lines of one person each.
I'd be sitting
So
here in
you-
the star wondering what to do.
Yeah. Just as
So
a
you have
note
to
for
help.
just as a note for those of you that didn't get the time change early and we're on here at about 7 o'clock, the use of stars, the definition of stars and things like make a left-hand star 3/4 to a line of 4. That was about a 45-minute discussion just on the use of stars versus circle left right here. So it's interesting. The
That
comment
was my fault. Sorry.
No.
That's all right. Now let me just say about this that sequence where I called a circle right, a quarter, face in and back up. Anytime you circle right, I swear to you, the dancers don't think the word circle and right belong in the same sentence.
Mhm.
And so just that means a few of them are gonna stumble and bump off each other. But the fact that you're only saying circle a quarter back, face in, back up your home, they're not far wrong. Nobody's gonna break down. So if somebody has a little bit of trouble, they struggle a little bit, but they're not breaking down and everybody succeeds, you've got a chance at a humor moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I wrote it that way.
Yeah. The other thing is that I found with either one is that a lot of these, at least a couple of choreography programs that I use, they don't understand it. These circle up 4s or these stars, they just sit there, we don't recognize that.
That is correct. I use SD Caller, and it only does the 2x4, 1x8 choreography. It doesn't do any stars or anything.
Yeah, Taminations, I think same problem with the circle 4s, and I think CSD has same thing.
Yeah.
SD,
Taminations will do the circle 4. It won't do the stars, but you got to go like circle 4 left 1/4, circle 4 left 3/4. It will not do a full circle.
I might have spelled it wrong.
Isn't that the reason why we shouldn't use programs to create choreography?
That's a whole new session.
Sorry.
Okay, that's all the questions that came up. I've got the first sequence that you had loaded on Taminations, and we can go through your sequences if you want to discuss them as they go, Mike. There's been a few comments that people have asked to actually look at these on Taminations, what you were doing. But before that, I think, Rod, was that you had a question?
Yes, it was. Well, the only thing is about the stars, it's one of the most misunderstood calls there is on the list. And in the definition, it says, you know, that it's with at the star plus the adjustment. That's part of the definition, the star plus an adjustment. So you have to, it depends on what the next call is, a lot of time what that adjustment is. That's why there's so many different discussions, variables, and stuff with a star. That's why people never know how to do it.
Mhm.
So Rod, I agree with you completely. And what I would do is, if you want to use stars, I would use them as part of a theme for a 10 call sequence. You could do it quickly by saying, but remember, when you make a star, you're really in a position to turn the stars, but not back to a 2x4 unless you fudge them and say you got to have a fudge call. So if you're going to do a fudge call, that is not the call that brings them back to a standard line in terms of the relaxation in the dancer's mind. So if you hear somebody, you hear a tape recording, you dance to a caller who uses a circle in a creative way, write it down and figure it out by hand and call it that way and get used to it. But in terms of putting it as a regular part of your choreography, I think it's more special once in a while, but use it as part of the theme, not as part of the resolution to a line.
I agree.
So Mike, can I ask a question about you're
Absolutely.
using small flow modules and you're calling those a theme. So what makes the small flow module a theme?
What makes it a theme is it does flow very naturally, but it's not something that you would call very regularly, that the dancers wouldn't have to activate their brain a little more to do, such as pass through, wheel and deal, double pass through, first couple go left, next couple go right. That could be considered a flow module, but that's not a theme. So let's say you don't use tag the line after Dixie style very much. That means you're gonna set it up called Dixie style to a wave and tag the line. What you do afterwards is up to you. Initially, I'd keep it simple: face right, bend the line, and you're back to lines. Get wind in the face, pass through, wheel and deal, call something else. Maybe set that same thing up again next after they've been home, and you work it again. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
We had sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it kind of answered my question. I mean, so basically it's in the theme category if it's slightly unusual, but at least you can sort of get them through it. And
slightly unusual that they'll do it, but they're like, oh, and they wake up a little bit.
Yeah. So
we had a session. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Some dancers are going to stumble, and that's when you want to say face right and bend the line and get them back in, do some familiar material. Now maybe set up your theme again called Dixie style to away, ready, tag the line. Now you're ready with your clover leaf, puts the boys in the middle. So what will happen is if you use that theme enough with dancers you call for all the time, pretty soon that becomes part of your own regularly used toolbox stuff. And now it's not a theme anymore. Now you look for something else. Maybe if it's Dixie style, maybe your theme is to call Dixie style to away, boys trade, and spin the top, starting with your left hand. Now you got to get out to a line real quickly after that.
Yeah, we had a couple sessions on theming, and the three predominant categories come up was one, theming of a dance around an idea like Pirate Night or Easter Night or Weeknight. That's the genre or the ambiance type theme. The second one was a movement theme, which is more of a focus theme if you're teaching a specific movement. And the third one is a theme that can permeate through a night. One of the examples was Dixie style followed by something else was the theme. And the three that came up was Dixie style to a wave, followed by a tag the line, Dixie style to a wave, followed by a swing through, which has a right hand start in the center, and then Dixie style to a wave with an alternate ending to an Alaman left. And that theme for the whole night was Dixie style, but each one of those was a flow module, and that was the flow module was the theme, and the most common one that was used was Dixie style to a wave, swing through, chain down the line. In your case, Mike, is Dixie style to a wave, tag the line, two movements. That's the theme. What you do with it at the end is up to you. Would that be about a correct summation?
That is correct, except I want to speak against that particular module. because
one?
I have found that all too often Dixie Style to a Wave and Boys Trade is not helped by instead calling Dixie Style to a Wave and Swing Through, because the boy still has to turn half right first. So literally some of the guys are into it before they know they've started the call. The girls don't know. So now you do your swing through, but they want to trade in the middle, and then you call chain down the line afterwards. I've literally seen some ladies try to trade again because they didn't know where the spin the top started. That is the kind of thing that might start like in your beginners class as a theme. Give them a little stop beat in between each one and make them get it. After that, it becomes sort of a specialty item that flows nice when everybody knows that. So you had to be careful with that particular module. That was my disclaimer.
Yeah,
Similar to lead to the right and anything other than circle to a line.
Yeah, that happens a lot, which is why in the first sequence I worked here, it was heads lead right, veer left, because that's the other thing callers do a lot is they bend the line. And then if they don't, they did a chain down the line, but then they did a flutter wheel, and they always do it because it brings them back to a partner line, either in sequence or out. And I wanted to show you that that's not important in creating the dance experience.
So can I try to summarize the site calling portion of what you did and have you tell me if I'm off base here?
I'll do my best.
So number one is you develop your set of themed modules, and then you're going to use that as your structure. Then number two, you know appropriate continuations for those modules. And part of the site is looking at your dancers to see how well they are taking your theme. And if they get into trouble, you're ready with a continuation. So number three is basically, you know the trouble spots and you're ready to either normalize or get out very quickly. And that's basically the entire site calling portion, I think, that you were presenting.
I would say that's a different way of saying the same thing, Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to test it to make sure.
Yeah.
And good. So for your resolution part, you didn't get into like mechanics too much of resolution, but to me, it seemed like it's more of a recognition of where they are and having some get outs that you say you're constantly looking for get outs, but some get outs that basically take them back home. Could you maybe talk a little more detail about how you recognize where you are for those resolutions, or are you just ready to do it because you knew where those modules were going to end up?
Okay, let's, Mel, can you bring up terminations? And let's work a little bit.
That was your first routine, that I can clear that. You want that cleared?
Okay, we could start there. Now I'm looking at the number one man, not the partner, but number 4 doesn't have the partner. Then I look again. Oh, it's an opposite lady thing. Okay, so I know that if I recycle and veer left and boys circulate, then I'll be ready for the Ferris wheel to put the head boys home. Now the boys circulate. That'll put the head boys home after a Ferris, but I now see along the way, ooh, girls trade. So you don't sight it all at the same time as you're working your get out, you work it. Now, I know the Ferris is going to put the heads home. I don't really know yet what the sides are going to do, but I know paired with the opposite, it's either going to be a star through or a square through 3. We're going to Ferris, and in this case, it's star through and back up. Okay, let's have the sides touch a quarter. Let's have the heads half sachet. No, that's wrong. Have them unsachet. And now have the heads face in. Have the center girls run. Now, when I did the circle, now the ends are gonna, this is the get out that I had in the presentation from here was ends face in. So you see, in that case, they were there, it was just face in and they are home. Now, that wasn't where they were. Let's see. That wasn't where I had the sides. How did I have them? Okay.
You had the a boy girl line, so the boys were on the right end of the line, heads on the ends, and then the sides looking at their partners.
Yeah, let's
So-
let's have the heads face in. Oh boy, I don't move them that fast.
I do.
That's okay.
Indio hothouse, we go pretty close to that.
Yeah, probably.
By the way, Mel, we decided to have you do the terminations because I'm definitely not good at it, and he's only mediocre in comparison.
That's correct.
Yeah,
So in terms of examinations, this is the blind leading the blind over here.
okay, so, oh no, I know what you did there. You did, hang on. Can't type worth a damn today. Why will you not do cloverleaf? There we go. There's pass through, clear left. There you go. You had something like this set up.
Oh, yeah. So I think
Hmm.
have him tag the line, Mel. No, I just scored the set.
It's where it's set.
Basically-
That's going to do it, Mike. I know.
Now,
if you have
basically, if you have the heads face in,
okay, heads face in. Go ahead, Mike.
sides, boy walk, girl dodge. Sides, you turn back and move in. Or the leaders of the sides, you turn back and move in.
You want the side boys turn back.
Side boys. you
Side
turn
boys
back.
also, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this is the line if you get the sides to move in
And you have
to
this,
form the
you can
line.
have the side step into the middle.
Yeah. Do they move in? Just okay, back away. That works. I think this is the one that you were talking about, Mike.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. That's the one I was trying to get back to. It's just one I see, and I couldn't set it up because I don't call to the setup for the at home. I call it a. I'm an opportunist. I just grabbed whichever is the quickest way to get them home at the time, and that's what I get.
Okay, so
So
sorry, go ahead.
if we do the ends face in, that's where they were. Now look at the centers. Because I know that a lot of newer callers, for instance, couldn't see the circle right a quarter. So if we have the center circle right a quarter, is it not doing it? There we go. And now centers face in and back up.
Now, if they did that circle right 1/4 and you said face in and back away, it would flow real smooth rather than the stop time there in termination.
Now I do get a little pushback, Mel, at times when I say, why do you say back away? If there's nobody behind them when they face in, they automatically back up. And my response is, if you want everybody backing up on a different beat so they don't feel in unison with everybody else on the floor, which is part of the wow, then don't worry about it. Just go by definition. But if I say circle right a quarter, face in and back out, if they did it, they're all stepping back on the same step. There is unison in it.
Yeah.
That's why I call it.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of callers call something similar to that. They get them home, and then the next call, if they had the sides at home but still in the center, call heads square through, and it forces the sides out of the way, and it does feel very rushed and crowded. You're right.
I prefer that not be a way that you try to do it.
I agree.
Yeah, so it looks like for resolution, you're identifying dancers just like you would if you were doing friends and enemies or something, and then trying to move their spots so that it's convenient to normalize at home.
Yeah, at some point, whenever you're done creating the dance experience, Mike, at least the way my brain works, you're not but 2 or 3 calls from a friends and strangers or a friends and friends get out. You can get there within just a few calls. And now if you got your right and if you got your right and left grand or your boys run promenade, you've got a couple of calls where they're home or they can get out real quick. That's when the get out becomes a continuation of the dance experience. So the dance experience that the dancers experience is much more positive, and rather than the typical way of doing it, we're just here. I'm doing the patter. I'm calling the patter here, and now I'm doing the get out.
So since this is heavily module based anyway, could you offer something for the newer callers that are dealing with modules to be able to do this site resolution thing? Because it seemed like you'd put yourself in the position to use some canned get outs from different positions anyway. Maybe that they didn't have to have extremely accurate identification skills to pull off what you're talking about here.
Okay. Mel, I'm just going to give you a series of calls. These are not in the presentation.
Okay.
Okay. So let's say this is the first tip. I've done my circle left. I've done my circle left. I think the worst thing you can call the first tip of a dance with dancers you don't call for all the time is Alaman left to an Alaman Thar or Alaman left Alamo style. They're like a piston engine out of time. So I would be calling. So I wouldn't even be doing. So I wouldn't do any of that. Let's have them all face in. I start off from a squared set.
Well, we're just going to do this.
There you go. And undo is something else. Okay, now head square through 4. So the next time maybe it's going to be side square through 4, but get some wind in the face for them while the others look. Now you just had the left pull by, so let's create a flow module. I want to show you one that I want you to write down. Slide through, because we have lines of 4. That's not part of this module. Right and left through. This is from standard in facing lines. This module works every time. Do a right and left through, go Dixie style, do a wave. Tag the line all the way through, and I left the call out, so we'll fix it. Face right. Girls trade. Bend the line. We're back to the lines of 4 where we started. What I normally call is after a bend the line, I want a bend the line or a partner trade creates the flow for a reverse flutter. So I would want to do that. So now we're going to do reverse flutter. Or should we start over, Mel, from the squared set?
Up to you.
Now go Dixie style, do a wave. Tag the line all the way through. Oh, heck, I'm not remembering the darn thing. Face right. So at this point, if I don't remember what I'm calling, girls trade. You see the friends and strangers developing? Because sometimes you just get lost. Ferris wheel. Center star through and back up. Okay, so this time if you had the heads back up, the sides start the next sequence. Side square through 4. We're going to get them in the line, and I'm going to try what I think is the sequence I want to present. I actually never wrote this thing down. I invented it in my head on the airplane to a caller lab one time, and I presented it on a caller lab session. Didn't have it written down anywhere. Slide through. Starts from in-facing lines. Pass through. Partner trade. Notice the boy has the flow to start the reverse flutter. Reverse flutter. Dixie style dual wave. Tag the line all the way through. Now, if you wrote down the sequence, it was from in-facing standard lines. You did a pass through, a partner trade. You did a reverse flutter. You did a Dixie style to a wave, and a tag the line all the way through. That's 5 calls. Now, to me, that qualifies as a theme. Now, if you want to get them back to the same in-facing line they were in, have them face right and bend the line. Mel, go ahead and do that. Now, we're going to do the same thing again, only we're going to face left and bend the line as the very last call. Pass through. Partner trade. Reverse flutter. Dixie style to a wave. Tag the line all the way through, and this time face left and bend the line. Notice what you have done here is you have half sashayed the partnerships from where you began. Now, if you did that and you wanted to get out right here, what would you call? I'd say ends face in.
Yeah.
Ends face in, centers back up. That's what I'd say. Now, if you want to do another Dixie style, this gives you the opportunity to do some extended application DVD type work. Pass through.
Hang on.
Whoops, get the heads facing in.
That's what you would call from there. Ends face in. Or you didn't want to call that?
I wanted to have them back in the corner line half sashayed. So you need, okay, now this is where they were after you put them in the corner line. You did side square through 4 and slide through. Then you did the module, the pass through, partner trade, reverse flutter, Dixie style, tag the line. You did a face left, bend the line, and they are now in the half sashayed corner line. From here, if you called ends face in, centers back up, they would be home. But don't do it, Mel. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yep.
Let's say you want to work a more DBD, more EA version of this. Pass through. Partner trade. Reverse flutter. Girls lead. Go in with the left hand. Pick up the boy. Bring him back. And put the boy in the lead, Dixie style, to a wave. Tag the line all the way through. Now, if you want to preserve the footprint before you started the module, which makes it a footprint 0, you always face right and bend the line. Mel, could you type those 2 calls in?
Mhm.
And you would do that if you wanted to call that DBD thing again. Now, Mel, could you erase those last 2 calls? Now, if you face left and bend the line, you half sashayed the footprint from where you started the module. So if you were in a standard corner line, now you're in a half sashayed corner line. And if you did as we did this time, you started in a half sashayed corner line, you now are in a standard line. So Mel, face left.
Did you not want to bend the line first?
Oops, I wanted you to face left and then bend the.
He faced left twice. He'd already said face left.
Oh, I said it twice. Undo that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
now
bend the line. I'm glad somebody was listening to me. I wasn't. Okay. Play with that module and how it half sachets the footprint, all the variety it provides and stuff like that.
Hey, Mel,
Yes?
do a right and left through. So now, like what Mike was saying, you're always looking for an easy out. Star through in the centers, face in.
Yeah, that was not the in sequence corner line or half sashayed corner line, which I was using. You put them in an out of sequence corner line. So the star through put them in sequence. That's why that works.
Right.
Yep.
And but I'm just saying is this, I just saw it. Boom. It's like what you say. You're always looking for a core, you know.
There's all kinds of variations.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
On your bend the line right there is your corner line.
You can challenge yourself. You can challenge yourself if you have SD caller. I use SD couple because every couple has a different color. Or some of you use colorama. Whatever it is, you can set up your in-facing standard line. You can do a theme, and you can call them back to standard lines. Do another theme, and then get them back to standard lines. Now see where they are and try to match them up to do a get out. Now the trick is you want to do it in less than 5 calls or less, which almost always can be done. So if you play the old friends and strangers normal game, which is pass the ocean, swing through, somebody circulate 5 times and the other ones trade 3 times, or whatever you do, trade and circulate and all that. Now you're 9, 10 calls into the get out, and the dancers know you're doing a get out, and you've just blown your wow.
Yeah, just as a note, the reason I'm putting those 5 calls per sating is a theme sequence that I've just posted that into the chat. So those of you that wanted those sequence, you can copy them from the chat. And just as a note, all of the choreography that Mike used in his presentation, that presentation is now available on the OC Callers website.
Do we know what the OC Callers website URL exactly is?
Yeah, I put it up there as well.
Okay, good.
In that.
And I've already posted the PowerPoint and everything on the website.
Yep. And
Except the video. The video's not done yet.
I'm just looking for the PowerPoint presentation.
so I think it's
It'll be in your email as well, Mel.
Oh, it just had a very funny name come attached, but I put the PowerPoint presentation in the chat as well. You'll have to rename it once you download it.
I think if it's not obvious, it should be emphasized that this brand of site calling that you're doing, Mike, is not fully extemporaneous. I mean, you actually have a plan of creating the dance experience, and that takes first and center stage with what you're doing.
You are absolutely correct. And the reason I emphasize it that way is because typically the two methods of calling are predictable modules callers slap together every time, or they're playing stop and go trying to site call.
Yeah.
And that's why I suggest the creating of the dance experience and get them back to in-facing lines. You're going to create flow modules. You're going to create interesting choreography. You're going to develop your square knowledge of how to move dancers from position to position to get them back in those lines. And then after they've built, say 2, 3, maybe they were just maybe callers are just practicing building these things. Maybe they did 9 or 10 of these sequences with a theme in the middle of each one. And so they've got something they would never call live because it's 90 calls long. But wherever they are in that in-facing line or the call just before it, look for your get out. What can you do from there? And you'll train yourself to spot these things. So your caution, Mike, in my opinion, is very well put and very well placed.
If I can put just a little product placement in there, if you go back in one of the sessions, Mike talked about recognizing these get outs in his activator system that he presented here. And I believe you also got that book, The Activator System. Is that still available, Mike?
Yes.
Yes. So that talks about basic, I'm paraphrasing, you correct me if I'm wrong, but moving the dancers around with an idea, and then the activator systems, where is that corner from where I am? That's really, really oversimplifying it. It's a lot more complex than that, but it's a very good system for always keeping track and finding that corner in a very short time.
One thing about the activator system is you are corner chasing if you start in a corner box, but it doesn't appear to be corner chasing, because when you finish the activator, which is a module, when you finish that activator, you're not in a standard always formation facing your corner. You're in a half sashayed or a same sex that you then have to fix to get out normally. That's part of it. So yeah, there's use to that, but you can also take, if it's something in an activator module you like, for instance, there is in book 2, for instance, 8 chain 3 centers pass through. There's a centers in, and one of the activators has you cast 3/4, the other one has you cast a half. Now you can follow what the rest of the activator does, or you can create another flow module from there and then get them out your own way.
Yeah. And part and parcel of where you're going with this is, there was a big discussion here, which was quite a controversial argument when I threw out the phrase, there is no such thing as pure site calling. It does not exist. I still stand by that, and I've yet to find a caller to prove me wrong. Every caller that, regardless of what they're doing, extemporaneous site, modular site combination, uses things like a theme module, a flow module, or a pre-known get out resolution from a recognized formation, which is a module that aids in the flow of the dancers. And the whole concept is to give that dance experience, as Mike said, to the dancers. You're setting it up for the dancers to experience and have the event, not you.
Yeah, Mel, I would completely agree with you. I believe it was Tony Oxendine who was asked the question like that. And he said, any caller that tells you they're a site caller, I guarantee you half their calling is modules. Now, that doesn't mean it's the modules you learn in caller school that are always resolution modules. They always take you from a corner box to a corner box, or a corner box to a corner line. It's just as important when you have a stock of those in your toolbox to build flow modules. Mel, can we just go through a few things that I...
Absolutely.
Okay, a flow module. Heads lead right, veer left, chain down the line. Now, from there, with that courtesy turning, I would put... from that courtesy turning. That's some pretty serious winding around, particularly early in the dance, and if the dancers are not that familiar with your calling. So I want wind in the face in an easy way. Pass through, wheel and deal. They're all standard couples. Double pass through. Enough wind in the face after the double pass through. I don't want to call first couple left, next couple right. I don't have to. They're not standard. They're not partner paired anyway. Leaders partner trade. Touch a quarter. Now at this point, I wouldn't want to do the normal thing, which is scoot back or walk and dodge. I do this. Girl fold behind the boy. Double pass through. Face to the right.
Space bar is not working.
At least it's your computer. On this side of the screen, it's the wheels between the ears. So at this point, I would call couple circulate almost always. So let's do that. Couple circulate. Now, after the couple circulate, if it's plus, I would call tag the line 3/4. If it's mainstream, I might call tag the line, but the boys stop in the middle. So put in a tag 3/4. Or I might say tag the line, but boys stop in a wave in the middle.
So you don't do a 3/4 tag the line as mainstream.
Is that mainstream now?
Yep.
Yep.
I think I knew that before COVID.
Yeah, you got to remember these things change on days that end with the letter Y.
Okay, now to give some boys something to do. Boys swing through, girls trade. Extend. Boy, am I close to the get out. Boys run.
Hang on. So all of this above is just extemporaneous site. You're just
That
moving
was
the-
using the flow. I was using what I consider to be flow modules linked together, because flow modules are 3 and 4 call sequences that don't resolve. They can, but you don't want you
You're
to
just
think
not
that
paying
way.
attention to the function, whatever the function is. You just
Well, you
know
don't
the
ca-
calls work well together and flow, and that's what.
right. Put the calls together that work well together.
I'm just making a note so that when I paste this, they've got to know what you're doing there.
Well, at this point, we've been calling enough, and they've been moving around. I did a couple of different things. Okay, so boys run. I'm looking for the get out. And it still feels like the dance experience. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Now, most callers would call Zoom. What I might do, particularly if I did this like tip 4 or 5 of a dance, or it's with people I call for a lot. Does everybody see if I call Zoom, it puts the side couples at home, the heads would then be in the middle, and they star through. That's what most callers would see. Now, Mel, if you could take those last 2 calls out. Okay, instead of Zoom, center square through 3. Put centers in. Ends star through, centers trade. Okay. Mel, can you undo that and put us back to where I was going to call Zoom, but instead called boys square through 3.
Centers.
Oh, I should say center square through 3. I said it wrong. Okay, so we're going to have center square through 3 again. put centers in, and all hinge. Now, this one's tricky. You got to dance you call for all the time. Centers turn through and centers courtesy turn ends zoom 3/4. And you'll be saying you're home because they won't quite know where to end up.
Well, they could sing.
Yeah, Zing's on the wrong list, though.
Well, that was not what I called. That was a full zoom, but okay.
I'm just trying to figure out how to do it here.
Name it a sing.
Right there. And the center's back up. Anyway, the square their sets in their home. I have found that some dancers, even new dancers, I tell the ends to zoom, roll back, zoom 3/4, roll back. Are you home? And they're kind of wandering a little bit, but they're there and they don't believe they actually got there. And that kind of helps them fix the square. There's a little bit of self-satisfaction in getting there after that.
Yeah, in most cases, that's along the line of the same with the stars. If you called an end zoom 3/4 and are you home, bang, clap, 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 or something like that, they will make that adjustment automatically.
Right. So the point is, if you're going to do something weird like this, make it so that everybody is going to succeed. No exceptions.
Could I just, what I've noticed is that the recent virtual square dancing, trying to call to two couples where no one is there, is a hell of a good way to actually learn these things, to see where you might be and how to find these nice get outs, because there is one partner around sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I would give a little bit further explanation of what you just said, in that when you do two couple calling, you're learning how to work, first of all, isolated sight, which is leaving 4 people on one side of the square and the other 4 people on the other side. You're learning how to isolated sight. If you're doing the get out where we put the ends home and the centers doing something else, now you're learning how to maneuver the centers to get them home. And so in that respect, you're right. Calling two couples is extremely useful and helpful. Great learning experience.
I just edited that centers turn through and courtesy turn at the same time as when you would call, and the ends 3/4 zoom, and you should be home. I just re-edited that to put it in that.
Right. But basically you want to do the centers turn through and courtesy turn, ends zoom 3/4, roll back, might have to tell them pass each other, they saying you're home.
Yep. And
they'll do it, but the point is you gotta wait. They can't really arrive there until the heads are home, or they're not going to feel good about it. That's why I did it in that order.
Sir, right, Mike I want to say thank you very much. We're now half an hour past our time window. It was just getting so into it, I wasn't even paying attention to time. Don't feel you have to stick around, but Mike and Janet are here. Janet will tell Mike what to answer correctly, so she doesn't have to give her any more Easter eggs for Easter. But I want to say thank you very much for coming in, Mike. It is
my pleasure.
Appreciated. We are looking at a number of different topics, and as always, if anybody has any ideas for presentations, by all means send us away. We will try and get the best person for the job to come in. Mike is sticking around for a little bit longer, so if you have any questions or anything you want to look at specifically, by all means, now is the time to ask. The room is open for discussion.
Thank you. Now, Janet, because he's got the screen, I can't get to, let's see, well, maybe I can. I want to put my phone number in there because if you don't have it, I chat more often. I get to that quicker than I get to email. So I'm clicking on the chat and I can't activate it. Can you activate your chat?
What's your phone number, Mike?
Area code 480. And if you're from out of the country, it's the pre-prefix number is 1. And then the area code is 480. And then the rest of the digits are 2040110.
I'll share.
And that
I'll share the screen again that has that slide.
yeah, I don't always get to email, but if you have a quick question or a question, you can put it in a message and I'll be able to answer it a lot quicker.
Good presentation, Mike. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Mike, and your contributions were very, very much appreciated.
All right, so Mike, thanks again. Nice to see you. And I see your schedule starting to fill up. I hope we see you in a few months out up here in Northern Cal.
Well, we're certainly hope it starts to open up. There's clubs that are starting to reschedule. For instance, I'm being rescheduled in Taiwan. That got canceled, but now they want to do it again in 2022, and so they've asked if I'm available. I said yes. So we're just in the process of getting that set up. And there's I'm calling, for instance, in June, first Friday of June, I'm starting the reopening for the Little T's, the biggest club in Tennessee. And are you playing with stuff again?
No, Mel did that. I thought I did.
Attaboy, Mel. Maybe she'll buy me some Easter eggs.
Hey, Mike, are you going to come up to Kitsap again up in Washington? Are you going to try that again like you did last year? You're going to try last year?
If they open up. Now, they haven't notified me that they're opening up. So if you find that out, let me know. And then I can contact them and say, hey, should we go ahead and schedule so just in case everything's open? I know, for instance, there's certain protocols they still have to follow, but the Lacadoe Hall in Olympia, they are reopening as of, I think it's the first weekend of May.
Yeah, we're still talking about figuring out who's who in the zoo and how we're going to open up. As soon as we get it figured out, I'm sure somebody will pass the word on to you.
In the meantime, I'm glad I get gigs to call. I called one back east in Butch Bloxham's basement. We had a plus dance. We had 3 squares, and I'm going up to Utah, and again, it's a home I'm going to be calling in. So I'm very grateful I get to work a little bit. And maybe I'll remember that tag the line 3/4 is Main Street if I get back to doing this more often.
Hey, Mike, I saw on Facebook one of the clubs actually had a dance in the Salt Lake City area.
Right.
So you might, put some feelers out, see if you can't pick up something else while you're there.
Yeah, that's usually a 3-day thing for me, or 4 days. Penny has me call C2 for her square on Monday night usually, and Tuesday I go back to Boise and call for here in Keith, and then I come back Wednesday, and then I call. It's Guys and Dolls. It's 2 clubs that go together to sponsor a Wednesday night. That's always in July. So I'm kind of waiting for them to reopen. I haven't heard from anybody that they're reopening, because if they are, they're usually on the phone or on the email contacting me.
Yeah, just a little note to everybody. I don't know what happened there. I had a slightly unexpected crash on Zoom. So if you were recording, it may have been shut off. I don't know what's been going on with my system today. For those of you that joined on at about 7 o'clock when my system went completely black, I do apologize for the language I was using towards my computer. And I did put a comment there in chat. As Mike says, he prefers to chat on the phone, but once again, as with a lot of caller coaches and instructors that like to chat on the phone and make themselves available, please check the time zones beforehand. If you are going to call Mike, make sure it's not at 2 o'clock in the morning, because every time somebody calls Mike at 2 o'clock in the morning to chat about square dancing, he owes Janet another Easter egg.
Yeah, you're buying the eggs. No, so if it's a message, Mel, if it's a message, I don't put a message alert on my phone.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, it can come in 24/7, but I'll just answer it, you know, when the next time I'm awake. So don't worry about if you're text messaging, don't worry about when you do it. In my case.
Yeah. That's your mobile phone number, is it?
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, our mobile phone numbers is set up differently here in Australia. So. So the floor is open. If anybody has any questions, I want to thank everybody for chipping in today, joining us today. We had a lot of people come in. I saw Ed Foote in there. I would love to get Ed Foote up here, but is he gone up? No.
I have a question for
Rod.
people like Mike, not Sikorsky, but how do you get your picture up there when you don't have your video on? You know what your name is? Yeah, there we go, Michael Hayward. How do you do that, sir?
I haven't done that, so I don't know.
So
no,
there's
Michael Hayward.
In the Zoom client, there's a settings tab, and then the profile, and then you can change your profile with edit profile. So I'm using a programmed client rather than the web. If you just use the web client, I don't know how to do it, but if you've downloaded a Zoom client onto your computer, then you can change the settings.
I guess the first thing to ask, Rod, is are you on a Macintosh or a real computer?
Yes, I'm on a real computer.
Okay, so you see where it says video at the bottom, that stop video icon?
Yes.
Okay, there's a little up arrow there.
Uh-huh.
If you press that little up arrow, it'll open up a window that says video settings.
Uh-huh.
If you go to click on the video settings, you
Okay.
can go, and one of the selections is profile. You see that?
I'm not seeing profile.
I don't either.
Okay, so have you clicked on video settings?
It's on the Mac.
Oh, I got to go down further. Let's see here.
Oh, let's scroll down.
Okay, so when you do video settings, you should get this one, this box here. Can you see that on the share screen?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, and then one of the selections is profile.
Oh, okay. I don't have that.
Okay, then that means you're just using the free client.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't believe you're able to do that. You'd have to set your background picture to you, or when you start up Zoom, as Mike was saying, if you load a Zoom client to use Zoom, you can create a profile right when you set it up.
Yeah, and the client I'm using is a free client also. You have to download the program and install it on your computer first. If you just use the web client that gets instantiated, when you click on a link, then you can't do anything.
All right. Well, I just thought I was just not as smart as some of you folks.
Yeah. So if you go to Google or whatever it is you're going to be using as your browser, if you just try Zoom free download, you can download it on your computer and you create a profile so that every time you log into a Zoom session or click on a Zoom link like I've sent you or somebody else sends you, you click on that link, your profile picture will come up when your camera's off.
Okay.
But by the way, it works the same way on the Mac.
I know, but it was easy to take a cheap shot at Mac users.
Yeah, but Chris, you were taller than Mike Hayworth. Oh, all right, Keith, go away. See what I started? Y'all picking on me now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Bob was a pirate for a minute.
So Mike and Janet, I guess we're into general chit chat. I want to thank you again very, very much for coming in. I hope to have you back for a couple more of these things. We do have a number of sessions that are pre-programmed coming up over the next several months. I have talked to Mark, and I may end up having Mark host one or two of these himself because I'm going to be finding out about my back surgery soon. So depending on when that happens, I may be out for a week or so. Next week, we've got Kip Garvey coming in to talk about applying technical zeros, transitions, and conversions. I have nothing scheduled for the 18th. Just as a reminder to everybody, the 25th of April, which is a Sunday over here, or the 24th of April, which is a Saturday, the 24th of April in the US. 25th of April is Anzac Day over here, and we will not be doing a session on Anzac Day. And then on the 2nd of May, we've got Barry Wanson coming in to talk about note services, the do's and don'ts, what is, what isn't, what works, what doesn't work, and some of the successes and some of the cautions behind note services. Later in May, we've got Jeff Priest coming up on teaching basics, the essence of how to teach. And he synopsises that as providing fun from the beginning. So that should be a well worthwhile session to attend as well. And as always, if you have any comments, questions, queries, or points, by all means, send me an email, send me a message. And if we can find the right presenter for the topic you want to look at, or if you're interested in presenting a topic, by all means, we can see what we can schedule you in. And just because you're a new caller, as we've noticed on Don Beck's sessions and a couple of the other sessions, just because you're a brand new caller doesn't mean you don't have anything to add. You may have found something that works for you as a new caller that could be of use to other callers. And as many experienced callers have said, the best method of site calling, the best 100% best method of site resolution or any resolution is what works for you at the start to build your own foundation with and develop it from there. So Mike, Janet, thank you very much for coming in again.
Thank you, Mel.
Love to have you back. And the room is now open for general chat if anybody wants to look at something.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Mike.
Wait, she did. Oh, Janet's off. You can talk about her now. I'm in headphones. She can't hear it. Ouch.
First you said you trained her, and now you're saying, oh, you can talk about her now. Mike?
No, you can't. I can't.
Tomorrow, I think in just outside of Phoenix, there's a chocolate factory. I think you're going to be visiting.
How far outside of Phoenix?
I have no idea, but the way you're going, you're going to have to buy a factory to pay back all the Easter eggs you owe her.
He said I'm going to have to buy a chocolate factory to pay back. You're probably right.
So the floor is open. Anybody want to chat about anything, look at anything? I can pull up Taminations if you want to look at flow. If you have material you want to look at and have other callers critique it for you, by all means. We've got a few new callers. We've got a lot of experienced callers up here. Yes, Jeff.
Oh, hi. An interesting session, Mike. I appreciate that. So I was told by my dancers when I walked it through for them that I did a workshop on it some 20 odd years ago. And that is spin chain and exchange the gears from a tidal wave. Now, I can't see anything wrong with it, and the dancers enjoyed it. Why isn't it used very often or at all?
For one thing, and is that came up in the applications committee about, correct me if I'm wrong, say 4 years ago.
Yep.
And maybe 5 years ago. And for definitional reasons at the time, different reasons, you could not definitionally do a spin chain the gears or spin chain and exchange the gears from a tidal wave. So I personally made this suggestion to the chairman of the committee at the time, which was Eric Hennerlaw. I said, why don't you just ask the callers on this committee whether they want to be able to do spin chain the gears and spin chain and exchange the gears from a tidal wave, or do they not want to be able to do it? Because we can rearrange the definitions wherever we want. And the vote came out over 70% in favor of no. They didn't want to do it. Now, I personally once had somebody show me how to do it, and it's half of the right, left 3/4, and as the centers trade, they immediately have to do a U-turn back.
Correct.
I think that destroys the flow of everything. What I have done, if you want to play with exchange the gears, for instance, is put them in say a partner line, or put them in a corner line. That'd be even better for pattern. Put them in a corner line, and then make a left-hand star. Everybody make a left-hand star, turn it 3/4, and a girl lead exchange the gears. And what you've done is you've taken all 4 people from the corner box, put them on the other side of the square in some sort of a wave formation. If they left star, it goes to a right wave. If they right star, it's left shoulders to a left wave. And that's a way to play with it. And then you don't have to mess with the tidal waves, which at this point is definitionally not legal.
Okay, thanks for that. But I found it very interesting, and so did the dancers. And I set it up so that we could just go straight into a right and left grand. For example, heads past the ocean, extend, fan the top, spin chain and exchange the gears, right and the left grand. You can just go straight into it. And it does work pretty good, I thought. And so did the dancers.
One of the questions, sorry to interject there, one of the questions that came up with that, Mike, is spin chain the gears is a no-no because of the definition. Spin chain.
Yeah, that's a harder.
No, hang on. Spin chain the gears is not allowed because the definition defines the starting formation as parallel ocean waves. It has that limitation on it. Spin chain the gears just says ocean waves, or sorry, spin chain and exchange the gears just says ocean waves, which I've seen spin chain and exchange the gears done a number of times, as you said, from either their corner line, calling it that way and setting it up with the stars, or calling it from a tidal wave. I don't do it because, quite frankly, I have a hard time with it, but I have seen it done on an exchange. I've never seen a spin chain the gears done from a tidal wave.
Well, I've seen it done.
Yeah, I have too.
It's kind of a judgment thing, you know. If your presentation is good for the dancers and you're making it, then I'd say go ahead and do it if you want.
But the reason I interjected that is, if I remember correctly, that was about 4 years ago when the committee was decided. I don't know if that ever went to the ARC, but they said no because it was not, as you say, not preferred to use it that way. So let's leave that out of the definition. But they never corrected the spin chain and exchange the gears to limit the formation of parallel ocean waves, which, and the reason I bring it up is when you start defining these things and put the definitions out, especially in other languages, when you get to Germany, Sweden, Japan, or Russia or whatnot, where the definitions are defined, it does not have that limitation. So it does get used that way.
So on the definitions, the way that CallLab does it, there are some that they restrict it to certain starting formations. Like, for instance, linear cycle is restricted to parallel ocean waves or ocean waves at plus. But of course, if you're calling advanced, that restriction is removed. And just because a certain formation isn't present in a definition doesn't mean you can't do it from some formation. I mean, I wouldn't call coordinate from facing lines, but there's nothing that prohibits it.
No, but no one knows where to end it.
That's correct. That's why I wouldn't call it.
But let me just clarify what I remember, because it was shown, it was demonstrated at a mainstream committee meeting at a Caller Lab convention where when you define the call starts from a certain formation, then as you go to the next level, then yeah, you can vary that. Typically, since Stezzler Plus calls, you wouldn't vary that until advanced. But there was some other reason, like for instance, one of them was turn half, centers 3/4, very center straight as ends turn back. And if you start with the tidal wave, technically there's the only two very ends.
Yeah.
There's something that
There's
had
a
to do with the
problem with the out. There's a problem with the out-facing end, who is supposed to lead the exchange or whatever.
Yeah, there's something like that didn't work, but it didn't work for different reasons, and it was all in the details. And so the way it came down is Eric asked the question of the committee people, do you want to do these two calls from a title, or do you not want to? And the answer was over 70%, we don't want to. So my personal position is one of the reasons the square dancing has stayed rather healthy compared to breakdancing, which came in and went out, line dancing, which blossomed and then really dropped off. Square dancing has hung around, and part of the reason it has is it is truly the only universal language in the world. I will never forget the experience of being at the National in Anaheim. I was way back then. I was newly married. It was her first Nationals. We got in the square to dance to one of our local Arizona callers. 4 couples, all monolingual. We, of course, spoke English. I think it was my corners were Japanese. Across the square were Chinese. And on to my right, they were Italian. We couldn't even say hello to each other. But square through and right and left through and slide through and pass the ocean and swing through, and we all did it. It is truly the only international language, square dancing. And in that, I strongly oppose doing anything that does not fit the definition. If you want to argue that point, you join the committee in Caller Lab and you argue the point.
Yeah, let me just reiterate because I'm not sure everybody's getting it. The thing with the definition is the problem is not that it says it starts from waves. Maybe it says that, but that's not the problem. The problem is the part after that where it tells you exactly what you have to do. And if you follow those words of exactly what it has to do, then it doesn't work from the grand wave. You can't do it.
Yeah.
In order to do it from the grand wave, you have to kind of ignore part of the definition and fudge some stuff and pretend that something else said there. Now, it would be possible to rewrite, or theoretically anyway, possible to rewrite the definition to accommodate the grand wave. And so then that's the next issue, which is that people said, no, I don't want to do that.
I'd rather much see any square actually manage a left-handed spin chain and exchange the gears than start to do it with the tidal wave.
I would always go into this direction by saying, the fact that callers have this discussion of what you can do, if you do the turn 3/4 and then you do the lead flip and then you start turning the star and who's going to fit, do you have to give a directional prompt to the dancers so that they know who's going to do what, because you're changing from your title to your foursome back to your title where you're working and making the dancers think like that? Are you calling that for the callers to show the technicality of how much it can be done? Or are you calling it for the dancers to have fun and success to it? And I figure if you have to work that hard to figure it out, unless you're calling it a very, very challenging level, I don't personally think it would be a something for the dancers unless it was a one night type speciality workshop DVD, fire and forget. And that's me, because that's calling for the callers. That's not calling for the dancers.
Is Brian still here? Or did he leave?
Brian,
I'd like
Brian-
to make a comment.
Brian Clark.
For years, I've been program chairman for several callers association and was many times in charge of investigating new choreography. And I think my reaction is similar to Mike's. When that first was approached, I took it out and I called it to my square for not even half a tip. Once I got them through it, I realized I don't want to go there. But that was my own personal opinion. I did not like the flow.
Yeah, so Brian Clark, I think probably maybe 4 Color Lab conventions ago, did an interesting session on extended applications and, you know, kind of stretching definitions and so forth. And he had categorized stuff. And one of the categories was off the reservation. And I think the tidal wave thing would be off the reservation. And to me, it sort of falls into the gimmick category. If you have to stretch your definition beyond what's reasonable, then it kind of turns into a gimmick. On the other hand, we tend to look at the definitions as scripture, and I think that's wrong. I don't think we should necessarily be constrained by the definitions all the time. You know, if you can stretch it a little bit and make it work, and you're doing it for the dancers, not for yourself, basically, and you've got a good way to mess with it, then go ahead and mess with it. If it's successful, then do it if you want.
You know, Mike, that's probably the best explanation of definitions I have ever heard in my life. Is callers tend to look at definitions as scripture, and it's absolutely true, because we all use, if you're talking Christianity as an example, we all use the same Bible, but how many interpretations and how many people will interpret that so many different ways?
No, that's absolutely right.
I mean, that's a perfect analogy when you think about it. And some people are radically fundamental about their scripture, and other people say, yeah, well, it's there, it's a good book, and they leave it at that and they enjoy it.
I would be in
I like that analogy.
I would be in the fundamentalist category, because the thing about the definitions is that they're not always correct, but they're supposed to be, and if you follow them precisely, that's the only way that you can get additional complexity. In other words, when you expand the calls, you can't have 3 different answers coming out, right? It's like math. You're only going to get one answer, and only one of those is going to be correct. And so, and when you quote unquote stretch the definitions, by which we mean pretend that's not what it said and pretend it said something else, because it does say something precise, what you're doing is you're misteaching the dancers, and so then they're going to be unable to correctly extend things by definition later on, and that's just the road to hell.
Yeah, so Chris, I agree.
However, we must also be aware that the definitions aren't perfect. I mean, don't get me started on the definitions of spread. We could talk a lot about those things which are inconsistent as they are, and then we can define how we should explain it to the dancers.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. So everybody forever has called recycle and sweep a quarter, and it wasn't until just a few years ago when somebody was paying close attention to what it actually said. It's like, well, you know what, that's illegal. So we had to change the definitions to make it legal. But
actually, that is in the definitions. Recycle and sweep a quart or more is in the definitions as legal, because that falls into the category of convention, which is defined in your basic definitions, because you have definitions and conventions, and I'm not in disagreement with you, Mike. I'm in total agreement with you on what you're saying on that one.
Right, but that addition where it says you can sweep a quarter, that's recent.
I know.
For the longest time, everybody in the world was calling this totally illegal thing, like forever, and technically illegal. And I mean, the reason is that, well, the definition was wrong. So this is an example of oops, let's go fix the definition.
That's where you got the recycle was taught as girls turn back, wheel and deal, and the argument was made, well, what if the boys are inside? Well, then you call boys turn back, wheel and deal. I'm going, well, what?
So the bottom line, I had this discussion with several people, and one of them was Clark Baker, who is a definition guru for mainstream. And
And a lot of
You know,
and a lot of other levels.
Yeah, a caller was calling left track 2, and so
That could have been me.
What's that? You call left track 2?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, so now if you look at that purely by definition, I don't think it fits anywhere. You have to start to wonder: do I call reverse track 2, or do I call left track 2 based on what's in the definition book, or actually it's a mirror track 2, isn't it? And so I had this conversation with a lot of guys. One of them was Fix Cedar, one of them was Clark Baker, and so forth. And bottom line, we do not have a standard. The definitions are not a standard like an engineering standard where you specify things to the point where interoperability is assured. If you don't follow the standard for Ethernet, then you're not going to work. But if you follow that standard, then your device will work. But what we have is really a dictionary of jargon and convention. And basically, it's like the dictionary. If people misuse something long enough, it becomes proper. So we was talking about this recycle and sweep a quarter because it was in use and in vogue and people were using it. They added it. They made an exception for that particular call. And there's a lot of things like that in here. And if you look at the basic definition book, they're talking about formation in the beginning, and they say that the calls give the starting formation, and in some places in rare cases there's the word only, which means that it's restricted to that formation. But they clearly do not. They're actually saying that the formations that are listed are not the only possible formation. So they're opening up big cans of worms. So they don't give you the exact strict use cases for every call. And we just have to realize that that's what we've got and stop pretending that we have a standard, because we don't.
Well, we have standards, but we have to also realize that those standards were written at a time by some people, and other standards were written at a later time, and somewhere along there we have to understand that okay, they probably meant this, even though they defined it in strange words at those days.
Well, that's where I go back to my scripture definition. I mean, basically, you can assume that they meant something and then go with that. But that it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the original intent was. And some of it is written poorly, like the definition for spin chain and exchange the gears. It's been modified several times. And the prior definition that I can remember had the formation of an actual column in the middle of the call. And now that is no longer part of the definition.
No, and it was a heck if you try to stop at the column, which you should have here. Hey, you can find any?
Yeah, it was tough to get him to do that, but I mean, at least you had definitional precedent to be able to do that. If you wanted to point that out, you could actually do that. Now you don't have definitional precedent for that particular formation existing within the call. And so anyway, I don't know. I think we just take the definitions too literally in some cases. In some cases, it's like what Chris is calling, it makes more difference to them. But at the mainstream and basic level and even plus level, I don't think definitions really have the clout that they once had or they were intended to have at one time.
I think a lot of that comes from, there's a lot of advanced challenge dancers that will, how the definition, we had a bit of this discussion with, I believe it was turning the star 3/4 and you end in trade by formation because somebody called it with I can't remember the call right now. That's where it ends because it has essentially the same flow, but it's a challenge level call. When you get into that, like you made an interesting comment, track 2, for instance, is it reverse track 2 or is it a left track 2 if you want to pass left shoulders? And this is where, when Mike had said it's a universal language, but it's not a universal language, because if we look at track 2 as a classic example, track 2 does not, the only left and right that would be reversed to call it left left track too. It says you reverse the lefts and the right. Well, you've got a left track and a right track. It doesn't say anything about the passing rules, so the passing shoulders would have to go because that's not explained in the definition.
And that's not
By that-
changed by